house that's 150 years old will have some history to it, and the Maison de Maitre is no exception. And in fact, this story starts even before the house was built. And it starts with the birth of Jean Caillot of Chagnon. John was born in 1826, somewhere in the village of Chagnon. And just like his father and nearly everyone else in Chagnon, he became a farmer. The French term for a farmer is a cultivator, but we don't know what he was cultivating at the time. We don't know whether he was cultivating grapes or we don't know whether he was cultivating food. John reached the age of 34, and then in 1860 he got married to a lady who was 18 years younger than him, Françoise Repet. At that time, the Maison de Maitre didn't exist, and neither did the road at the side of the house, Rue Principale. So here is an old village map. This is the house that we are currently living in, and the road would have come around here. Would have gone through these gates and somewhere through here. The council wanted to straighten the road, and Jean and Françoise sold a piece of their land to be able to create Rue Principale. Around that time, they also sold their own home, which allowed them to pay for the Maison de Maitre to be built. It would have been a very, very modern building at the time. It's the only one of this style in Chagnon, and it is one of the tallest and grandest buildings in the village. And with features like the cast iron urn, the balconies, and the detailed metalwork on the gates, this house would have been quite the show of wealth. And of course, it wasn't just the outside, it was the inside that spoke of wealth too, including, of course, these personalised doorknobs. And we finally know that the C is for Caillot and the R is for Repet. Jean Caillot and Françoise Repet. And I tell you what a way to honour your wife back then. What a nice bit of equality for the 1800s. So now John was no longer listed as a farmer, but a negotiant, which is a French term for a cognac trader. He would have made wine from either his own vineyards or he would have bought the grapes from local growers. And then using the still or the alembic, he would have produced eau de vie to make cognac with. And barrels just like these, or actually even possibly these barrels, would be rolled across the yard and into the cellar. I might just wait here a minute, it's a tad wet out there. Damp out there. Anyway, within a year of getting married, Jean and Françoise had a son. They had Ernest, or John Ernest. We're going to call him Ernest. In 1884, when Ernest was 22 years old, he got married to Marie Jeanne Irma Contre. We're going to call her Irma. And they got married in a local church at a place called Saint Martin de Joulet. And we have actually been to the church and taken some pictures for you. Sadly, we couldn't go inside because it was all locked up. When they got married, Ernest listed no profession, but 10 months later, they had their first daughter, also Marie Jeanne, and at that point, he listed himself as a cognac trader. And sometime shortly after that, Ernest, Irma, and Marie Jeanne all moved into the Maison de Maitre. And in 1892, their second daughter was born, Louisa Marie Poyet Caillot. Old John Caillot was now 65 years old and was probably keeping an eye on what his son was up to. Older John Caillot was listed as the owner, whereas Ernest was listed as the cognac trader. And at some stage, Ernest and Irma took over the business and wanted to put their name to it all. And this is what they came up with. This is their trademark registration logo. So it would be Jean Ernest Caillot and Marie Jeanne Irma Contre KO, Contre and Co cognac. And this is what the labels on the bottles of cognac that were sold would have looked like. Sadly, no, we've not found any of these bottles of cognac left in the house. I think they're long gone, but that's quite cool finding that logo. And from eBay, we have managed to track down not one, but two letters from the property from 1897 with the logo and the name. At this time, John and Francoise moved away, and so did Ernest and Irma's elder daughter, Marie-Jeanne. So these are the results from the 1896 census. At the top, we have Jean-Ernest Caillot, who's the cognac manufacturer and the head of the house. We have Irma, who is his wife, no listed profession. Under here, we have their daughter, who is Louisa Marie Paulette, but now she's known as Madeleine Paulette. So there's obviously been some kind of name change there, and she's now 4 years old. Underneath here, we have Edmund Ernest, who is Irma's brother, or Ernest's brother-in-law. I tell you what, talk about a tag-along. And then underneath here, we have two other people living in the house. We have a coachman, and we also have another person who is a lady who is a servant. Things were obviously going really well here. It was a thriving business. It was a family home. They could afford to have two servants. But then it all went wrong, and in 1898, Irma tragically passed away at the age of 34. We don't know why she died, but we do know that she passed away at 2 o'clock in the morning. And Irma's death was probably the reason why the family mausoleum was built. And because of doing all of this research, we only found out a couple of months ago that the family's mausoleum is located just down the road from us in Oman Cemetery. Now, I do not agree with filming video content in cemeteries for YouTube videos. So what I have done is I've taken lots of pictures of the mausoleum. It is the most grandest one in the entire cemetery. One thing that I did notice when we went to visit the grave was these beaded flowers. I've never seen them before, and I came home and I did some research on them, and they are called immortals because they are everlasting flowers that were made of beads. They stopped making these, I believe, in the 1940s, but the condition and the colour of these was just astounding. And also that tiny little bottle. I wonder whether Ernest had taken his father a little bottle of cognac. There was quite a lot of space in that mausoleum, but only 4 people are buried in there: John, Francoise, Irma, and Ernest. In the 1906 census, John and Francoise are listed as living in Central Cognac. Ernest is still here, and at this point he has 3 servants. But there's no mention of 14-year-old Madeleine. Could she have gone to live with her sister for a while? Don't know. However, 5 years later, Madeleine does pop back up, and she is now living with John and Francoise in Central Cognac. Fast forward another 3 years for Madeleine, and she gets married to this man. And this is Felix Kammerman, or Lieutenant Felix Cameraman. And here is Madeline and Felix on their wedding day. And who was Felix Cameraman? He was the first French military pilot ever. The very first one. Felix had a biplane, and in this biplane he entered many competitions, including one called the Circuit of the East, where he won a big cash prize, which was the equivalent of 100,000 euros in today's money. Wow, talk about hitting the jackpot. He must have been quite the hero of France, because he had the Legion of Honour, and obviously looking at the pictures, he was quite heavily decorated in medals. Felix and Madeline then went to live in Paris, where he had a long career in aviation and aviation engineering. Ernest then sold the Maison de Maitre to the Richard family. He remarried and he went to go and live near Felix and Madeline in Paris. Ernest passed away in 1940, and he was the last member of the family to be interned in the mausoleum. Madeline lived until the age of 66, and Felix died in 1963 at the age of 79. The next family who owned the Maison de Maitre was the Richard family, notably Paul Richard. And in the 1930s, he had plans drawn up to change part of the property to turn it into a sausage manufacturer's. We do have a slightly grainy image of the changes that he made to some of the house. Across the property, there is still things that are left to say that it was a sausage producers and manufacturers, like all of the pigsties in the barn behind me. And we know he also stopped production of sausages for a while in 1939, so he did not feed the occupying Germans. And we suspect that the sausage manufacturing business was shut when laws on abattoirs changed. We don't know too much more about the Richard family, but we are hoping one day to find out more. We are still in touch with the gentleman who sold us the house, one of the Richard family. So when we know more, we will let you know more. And then after the Richard family, along came us too, and Merlo and Flora. It's been really exciting to bring you this week's vlog. And Mr. Butcher worked really, really hard on putting all of the history together. It's taken him a good few weeks of just being sat at the computer when he gets the chance. So credit where credit's due. Well done, dear. I am sorry to you at home that you may have noticed a little bit of sound distortion this week. It seems that this microphone thing doesn't work very well in the kitchen. It seems a bit echoey, so I am sorry, but we do read your comments. I have taken your advice. We do have little clippy microphones now. A big thank you to Janice and Dexter for our coffees this week. If you would like to buy us a coffee and support the channel, the link's in the bio below. We do YouTube. We do buy me a coffee. We don't do Patreon. We self-fund and support ourselves, but the coffees are really lovely, and all of the coffee money is still being saved up for a fountain for the front garden. I'm going to leave you here this week, and I'm not going to do wine of the week. However, I am going to bring you a selection of images that you might find interesting from the house history, pictures of Felix, cameraman, and so on. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, it is free, and we will see you next time.